Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Safety on Campus episode of our 2020 Family Orientation. These videos include interviews with my colleagues across campus, and the purpose is to introduce you as parents and family members to RIT resources and to life on campus, and to give you a few familiar faces that your student will see around RIT this fall. Today, we're going to be talking about safety on campus. And I just want to clarify that we're not going to be specifically talking about COVID safety in this particular video. Continue to watch the newsletters and these other videos for more information on that. But today, we're really just going to be talking about campus in general and the safety and security of our students and our community. Joining me today is Lieutenant Jake Griffin. We are very excited to have Jake. Jake is one of my favorite people on campus, and he helps me every year with family orientation, which means he's very familiar with parents in your stage of the experience and the questions and concerns that you have at this time. So Jake, before we get into the questions, would you like to introduce yourself and maybe explain to our families what exactly a lieutenant of public safety at RIT does?
Sure. Like Chelsea said, my name's Jake Griffin. I'm a lieutenant, which means I'm a shift supervisor. I run all the afternoon shifts. I oversee several officers and the majority of the events on campus. We're 24/7, but like I said, I just primarily oversee afternoons, but occasionally I'll fill in on other things. Public safety monitors the entire campus and all the satellite properties. We work closely with local law enforcement, and we do various other things, which I'm sure we'll get into.
Great. So I'm going to start with the most broad question. I actually just got this question from a parent this morning in an email, and I think it's probably on the top of everyone's mind. How safe is RIT?
Perfectly safe. I work here. It's one of the safest places around. Anyone can get online and look at our metrics. There's a thing called the Clery Act where we have to put what our crime statistics are online, and we're very open about what goes on here on our campus. Our biggest problem is just petty theft. So think of like bicycles or little things. If you don't lock up your bicycle, it might not be there when you get back. If you leave a computer out on a park bench for a whole weekend, it might not be there when you get back. We try our best, and we're pretty good at apprehending anybody who does steal things, but that's our main issue. Other than that, we have about 40 full-time officers that are constantly patrolling the campus and our satellite properties, and we deal with anything you would really call 911 for.
Great. So can you tell us a little bit about the first responders on campus and who that all includes, the public safety officers and others?
Sure. So we have our own communication center. So we encourage everybody to just call our number. Sometimes if you call 911, they just route it to us. If you call 911 directly, it can get a little confusing because our campus is so large. It's kind of like a mini city. So we oversee it. We respond to anything that like I said, you would call 911 for. If we need local law enforcement, which is the Monroe County Sheriff's Department, we will call them and they'll come in. RIT actually has their own ambulance crew, so they come in and deal with the ambulance and any medical emergencies. But if they need an all-hands-on-deck situation, they'll call in the other local ambulance departments and then the local fire department as well. So we all kind of work together as a giant group. And primarily, you just see me and my people, but you might see other people as we call them in as necessary.
Great. So where do students find information about the safety resources on campus?
You can always come to our office. It's in Grace Watson Hall, which is pretty familiar to most students. It's right next to Gracie's and a couple coffee places. But if you want to come see me in person, that's perfectly fine. It's all online. You can go to our public safety website. There's pamphlets everywhere. There's posters everywhere. We have an app called the Tiger Safe app. Basically, you can download it. If you're a freshman, the RAs will make you download it before even the second day. It contains all our information, how to call us. You can text us. You can call us. There's emergency blue lights all over campus, which you'll see when you get here if you don't know what those are. There's a million ways to contact us, and once you get a hold of us, we'll try to help you with any problem.
Right. And one of my favorite features of the Tiger Safe app is that blue light that's right on the phone. So if a student has an emergency, they can hit it and you'll be able to find them.
Yep, it's a great feature. We love it. It was developed originally by a student of ours, and now we help maintain it with a different company. Essentially, yeah. So wherever you are on campus, it doesn't track you if you're not using it, but if you do press that button, it does two things. It tells us where you are on a map on campus, and it opens a line of communication. So, you can just start speaking if you can, and you can just tell us where you are. If you can't, it'll give us an approximation. My favorite is someone went running one day and she fell in a field right, adjacent to campus. and she actually kind of broke her ankle. It was a bad call, and she didn't really know where she was. She pushed that button. We were there in minutes. It was no problem finding her, and the whole thing worked out. So ever since that day, I find it to be one of the most, useful reporting tools.
I love that story too, because I think it's just such a helpful app for so many reasons. I know I've had to use it a couple times when I've locked myself out of my office. So I'm also
Yeah.
grateful for the Tiger Safe app. So talk a little bit about, you just talked about this student who got injured. What in general happens if a student gets injured or if they get sick? How is public safety involved in that?
Well, we have an amazing health center on campus. So we encourage students, if you can walk and you're not injured or you're not too ill, to immediately just go to the health center. Fantastic people there. I'd go there myself if they'd let me. If you can't, you can always call our number and we'll come and we'll provide aid the same way it would be like if you called 911. So if you had broken your leg, I'll probably end up showing up first, but the ambulance would be minutes behind me and we'll help guide them in. Then you can go to one of the local hospitals and your insurance will pick it up from there. As far as illnesses and stuff, etc., we can show up, we can give you some advice. I have no problem giving advice. I've had a cold once or twice in my life. But most of the time, we either try to get you to the student health center or get you to a hospital if needed.
So earlier you mentioned a little bit about theft and how that's really the biggest crime on campus. So do you have, some tips for our parents that they can share with their students about how to avoid that or ways to keep their belongings safe?
Yeah, RIT is a really bike-friendly campus. At least I always find it to be. I ride my bike around it several times a year. If you decide to bring a bike, I would bring a U-lock, and it's literally just a U, and then there's a metal bar that crashes through it. They're really hard to cut with bolt cutters or any other metal filing object. The chain locks are pretty easy to break. You can almost break them all by hand. So if you're bringing a bike or something like that, you should really bring a U-lock. If you're bringing a nice, brand new, expensive computer, they make these locks. They just loop around a table and they secure to the computer. I would bring one of those. Other than that, I instruct your student to monitor their belongings. If you have some money in cash, you shouldn't be leaving it out laying around. If you have something you really care about, get a strong box and put it in your room and then put it somewhere. It may seem like overkill, but I do see a lot of students, especially recently, if you have jewelry or if you are a fan of cash over credit, bring a strong box, like a fireproof box. You can get them anywhere. You can get them online. They're only like $50, $60, and it's a little bit more security. We don't have that many barely if all break-ins into areas, but if we do, it's just an additional security measure.
Well, and I think one of the most basic but important thing that we also need our students to do is to lock their doors.
Yeah, that's so the residence halls and all the academic halls are hooked up to an automatic system where they lock down. The residence halls are locked down pretty much 24/7. You have to swipe to get in, but it is defeated if your dorm room is open or something like that. The RAs or residence life will really hammer on it, and we'll hammer on it for a while. I don't know where you came from. You could come from I usually use Pleasantville. It's a really old movie. No one gets the reference anymore.
I get it.
But okay, so everyone in that town didn't have to lock their doors. This is a perfect place to live. And RIT is a great place to live, but you should still lock your door.
Right. I think that's important. Everybody has to keep themselves safe and their things safe, even though it is a safe place.
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk a little bit about the relationship between public safety and local law enforcement? You started to touch on it, but how do you work together?
Sure. So we will handle most things in the campus. If you take like a dome and you put it over campus, that's kind of our jurisdiction. The Monroe County Sheriff's Office can definitely come in. They help us out. They help deal with any crimes that we might need help with. But for the most part, they kind of just leave us to ourselves. And any cases we have or any crimes we have usually go to student conduct and are handled through them. Now, if you want stuff to be handled in the local court system, we'll call in the county sheriff and we can go that way. Other than that, we work very closely with them. We share tips. We patrol each other's areas. Some of those guys are our best friends. It's a very good relationship.
Great. So when there is an emergency on campus, how does RIT communicate that emergency to the community?
We opt into a very popular program that essentially will do multiple things if I or someone else initiates it. First, let's just say an emergency like a blizzard. It comes up at least once or twice in RIT's academic year. We get a lot of snow. We decide to have a snow day. How do you alert, 20,000 people to a snow day? So essentially you activate that and it does a couple things. First off, it texts any numbers you have listed. So students, you can add your parents' number and, it will go to their number as well. It will call you immediately after and leave you a message. You'll get an email. Then there's a social media like outbursts. And in cases of like desperate emergencies, sometimes sirens can go off in buildings. You could hear like from a mile away, strobes that make airplane lights look dim. There's just no way to not know something's going on. So there's a lot of just notifications and we can activate that quite quickly.
Right. And as parents, you can watch the social media. The RIT website always has a banner if there is an emergency. Technically, your students can add you to that text list. I've honestly heard parents say that they don't like that because most of the emergencies that happen on campus don't really apply to parents, but definitely on social media and on the website. And when it is something very extreme, we make sure that we outreach to parents as needed.
Yeah.
So speaking of emergencies, this is the worst case scenario, but I know you get questions. What kind of training do students get as far as an active shooter situation on campus?
Active shooter is something we have to talk about. Unfortunately, a lot of students, 10 years ago really didn't get a lot of training. And as things progressed in like the United States and elsewhere, we started saying, hey, we really need to train students on what to do. We used a very popular FBI coin method. It's just called run, hide, fight. A lot of freshmen and, reoccurring students, especially living in the dormitories, will receive it. But essentially it's run out of the way, find yourself in an area in which, you can hide or completely remove yourself from the situation and barricade yourself. And then the worst case situation is, it's at the end, obviously, is, fight, try to get out of there. They'll do some practice drills. They'll go through the notifications I just talked about. And we haven't had a shooting incident on this campus in a long, very, very, very long time. We have still done the demonstrations. We still train people. We train departments. So our goal is like halfway through the fall, all the incoming people really know what to do. And all the people who've been here, including faculty and staff, have a good idea and a good refresher.
Great. Yeah, it's rare and hopefully will never come to RIT, but we want to make sure that everybody is prepared for those worst case scenarios. So you started to talk a little bit about what happens if RIT shuts down because of snow. Especially our parents who are in more tropical and warmer climates. I know there's some hesitation to send their student to these Rochester with our winters. So what do you have to say about what happens when campus shuts down and what is that like?
So, like I said, campus, has a snow day once in a while. Sometimes they're back to back if the snow's pretty bad. Our department still fully reports, like we'll sleep there if we have to. Other departments such as dining, etc., will sleep there if they have to and report. You'll still have a place to eat. You'll still have a place to sleep. Our buildings have generators. You won't have heat. Several years ago, we had a really bad windstorm and then a really bad snowstorm. It was like one of those once in a generations ones. I don't expect to have it again. But the whole area, the entire city almost had no power for, several days. RIT was the most cozy place to live. I didn't want to leave work at all. I had power, I had food, I had a place to sleep. It was great. You wouldn't even, if you had driven onto our campus, you wouldn't have known there was an emergency. Students were sledding, they were building snowmen, they were studying in the library. So this is something that RIT's kind of perfected over, a long course and, many trials. So I wouldn't be worried about the snow. Just know that it can happen.
Right. I think that's a good point that we're from these areas. We know how to deal with the snow and they do it very well. And in the case that it shuts down, students get a snow day and they can catch up on homework or go build that snowman and enjoy winter for what it is.
Definitely.
So Jake, I've been ending all of these interviews with a question. Either within your field or without it or outside of it, what would you say is your number one piece of advice for these parents of incoming students? Well, I don't think I prepared you with that one. I think I'm just throwing that at you here.
No, it's fine. I think over the last, definite years, I found that a parent who can achieve like the right amount of activeness in their students' life still, give them room to breathe, but also just check in once in a while. School can be stressful, things, plus, you add in other social factors like, oh, I found the love of my life after like 1 month, or, something like that. Just check in, make sure they're doing well, see if they want cookies sent to them, just see how they are. But don't be overbearing about it. Just, it doesn't have to be every day, just once a week, twice a week. And it can just be a text message. Hey, it's really nice to hear from you. Especially since we have a completely new semester model due to the COVID situation. So you won't see your student as much because there's a little bit of a lack of a break. So this check-in thing might be pretty important.
Right. And, a lot of you might be having those conversations with your students right now, but it'll also evolve over time as your student gets used to being at RIT and you get used to them being here. But that's really good advice, Jake. Thank you for sharing. And, thank you for joining for this video. It's always a pleasure to have you be a part of family orientation, even if it looks a little bit differently this year.
Yeah, my guest bedroom is not the usual setting, but I hope you enjoyed it either way.
Yes, absolutely. And to all the parents, thank you for joining as well. And I want to end with my typical reminder that you as parents can help us keep our campus safe by having conversations this summer with your student about protocol and etiquette related to COVID, including getting used to wearing a mask and practicing social distancing and washing their hands frequently. We know that it takes the entire community to keep us safe, and we want your students to be prepared when they come to campus to do their part. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.